6 signs you need to strengthen your emotional boundaries. Have you ever left a conversation feeling like someone just took something from you, but you can't quite explain what? Maybe it wasn't money or time. Maybe it was your peace, your calm, your sense of self. That feeling, that strange, lingering discomfort, is often a quiet signal that your emotional boundaries have been crossed. And if you're over 60, these moments can hit even harder. You've lived through so much, offered so much, and yet, sometimes it feels like people still expect more, without asking what you need. The truth is, emotional boundaries aren't walls. They're not about shutting people out or being distant. They're about knowing where you end and someone else begins. They're about honoring your energy, your values, and your well-being, especially now, when your time is more precious than ever. When we were younger, many of us were taught to say yes even when it hurt. We put others first because it was polite, because it was expected, and maybe because we thought that's just what love looked like. But as we grow older, we start to see the cost of constantly bending. It shows up in our bodies, our sleep, our patience, and our joy. Let's take a closer look at what might be happening beneath the surface. You might not even realize it yet, but your heart has been whispering for stronger boundaries for a while now. One sign is when you feel responsible for everyone's emotions, except your own. Say your adult child calls in a bad mood. They vent, they unload, and suddenly your whole day feels heavy. Not because of something you did, but because you took it all in. You tell yourself, that's what moms do, or I don't want to upset him, and you end up carrying a burden that was never yours. Over time, this kind of emotional caregiving can become exhausting. Not only that, but it trains the people around you to expect you to absorb their storms without ever learning to stand in the rain themselves. Another quiet sign is when you feel guilty for resting. Think about that for a second. After decades of working, raising families, helping friends, showing up, you sit down for an afternoon nap or say no to a social event, and guilt creeps in. Why is that? Somewhere along the way, we internalized the idea that being available meant being valuable. But rest is not a reward. It's a right. And if saying I need time for myself feels uncomfortable or selfish, it might be because your emotional boundaries have been pushed so far back, they're barely visible anymore. And then there's the subtle pressure to explain yourself. Have you ever found yourself giving long, nervous explanations for saying no to something? A dinner, a favor, a request that just didn't feel right? That urge to justify every decision is often rooted in fear that someone might be upset, disappointed, or think you're being rude. But saying no doesn't require a courtroom defense. You don't need permission to protect your peace. The need to constantly explain ourselves often means we don't fully believe our no is enough. These aren't loud, dramatic moments. They don't always come with arguments or tears. Sometimes they're just quiet tugs at your spirit, moments where you feel smaller, or wearier, or somehow less you after interacting with someone. Emotional boundaries are like invisible fences for your soul. When they're strong, you feel steady, even when life gets messy. When they're weak, even small exchanges can leave you drained. There's no shame in realizing your boundaries need a tune-up. It doesn't mean you failed or that you're weak. In fact, it takes great strength to look inward and say, something needs to change. And the beautiful thing is, it's never too late to make that change. Whether you're 60, 70, or 90, your peace still matters. Your energy still matters. You still matter. So let's talk about what it means to protect your emotional space, not with anger, not with distance, but with love. Love for yourself. Love for your time. Love for the life you've built and the serenity you deserve. Because when you start honoring those quiet signals, those little whispers that say, I'm tired, or that didn't feel good, or I need a moment, you begin to reintroduce yourself to a version of you that's been waiting patiently. The version that knows her worth. The version that doesn't shrink to keep others comfortable. The version that smiles and says no, thank you, and means it, without a tremble in her voice. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start to notice that the people who truly love you, they don't need an explanation. They'll respect your peace because they respect you. Sometimes the clearest sign that your boundaries need reinforcing is when your body speaks before your mouth can. You agree to something, a phone call, a favor, a family visit, and your stomach knots up. Your chest feels tight. You can't sleep the night before. That physical unease isn't random. It's your body waving a red flag, trying to protect you before your mind talks you into discomfort. You might say, "I've always been this way," and maybe that's true. But maybe, just maybe, you've gotten used to ignoring the signs. You've trained yourself to be agreeable, to be kind, to be the one who never causes a fuss. But being agreeable at the cost of your peace is not kindness. It's self-abandonment in a polite disguise. And when your body starts sounding the alarm before your words do, it's time to pause and listen. That tension in your shoulders, that racing heart, that heavy sigh, those are boundary bruises. They don't go away just because you stay quiet. Then there's the situation where you constantly second-guess yourself after a conversation. You replay it in your head, wondering if you said too much or too little. You feel exposed, like you handed someone the keys to your emotional home and now you're not sure if you should have. That lingering vulnerability isn't just social anxiety. It's often a sign that you shared something you didn't truly feel safe sharing. That your boundaries weren't ready to open that door, but you opened it anyway, maybe to keep the peace, maybe to feel heard, maybe just to avoid the silence. But here's the thing, just because someone asks doesn't mean you have to answer. Your story is yours. And it's okay to keep parts of it sacred. Have you ever noticed how some people just seem to take up all the space in the room and in your life? Their needs, their problems, their plans, everything revolves around them. And when they're around, you shrink. Not because you want to, but because there's simply no room for you. You nod. You listen. You smile. But inside, you're disappearing. If this feels familiar, you are not alone. So many people, especially women over 60, have been conditioned to be the background support, to cheer others on, to smooth things over, to be the quiet glue that holds things together. And while that might come from a place of love, it can slowly erode your sense of identity. You start to forget what you like, what you need, what you believe. And that's when the silence becomes dangerous, when your voice fades not because no one's listening, but because you stopped using it. Strengthening emotional boundaries doesn't mean becoming hard or cold. It means becoming rooted. It means letting your yes be full-hearted, and your no be peaceful. It means trusting that the people who truly care will make space for your boundaries instead of testing them. Sometimes, building these boundaries starts with the smallest shift, like not answering the phone just because it rings. Like taking a deep breath before replying to that message. Like writing down how you really feel before a difficult conversation so you don't lose your voice halfway through. And sometimes, it means allowing yourself to walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. Because when someone constantly dismisses your feelings or makes you feel small, that's not love. That's control. And the longer you stay in that space, the harder it becomes to remember your worth. But I'll tell you something beautiful, it's never too late to come back to yourself. It doesn't matter if you've spent 30, 40, or even 70 years putting others first. Today, you can decide that you matter too. That your boundaries aren't barriers, they're bridges to better relationships. Because when you're clear about your limits, you invite others to love you in a way that honors your truth. And if someone can't accept those limits, that's not your failure, it's their choice. And their choice doesn't define your value. You've earned your peace. You've earned your rest. You've earned the right to say, that doesn't work for me, and not feel like you have to explain or apologize. You've carried enough. This chapter of life isn't about proving yourself. It's about protecting what matters most, your heart, your energy, your joy. It's about taking up the space you were always worthy of. There's a quiet kind of exhaustion that creeps in when your emotional boundaries are constantly tested. It's not the kind you can fix with a nap or a vacation. It's deeper than that. It's the fatigue that comes from always being on, always being available, agreeable, and accommodating, even when your heart is crying out for space. And one of the most overlooked signs that your boundaries need strengthening is when you start to resent the people you care about. Not because you don't love them, but because you feel like you're always giving and rarely receiving. You say yes because you want to help, but then you feel frustrated, even angry afterward. That resentment isn't bad, it's a signal. It's your soul saying, I've been giving beyond my limit, and I need to feel seen too. Resentment, guilt, discomfort, anxiety, they're not the enemy. They're the whispers that tell us where our boundaries are thin. Where we've made ourselves small to keep the peace. Where we've kept quiet when we really needed to speak. But here's the truth, peace that costs your joy is too expensive. Harmony that silences your voice isn't worth keeping. And love that asks you to betray yourself? That's not love, it's control dressed up in obligation. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your heart. Your time, your kindness, your attention, these are precious gifts. And like any gift, they should be offered freely, not extracted out of guilt or fear. It's okay to ask yourself, what do I need in this moment? It's okay to pause, to step back, to take a breath before responding. And it's absolutely okay to say no, even if you've said yes 100 times before. Because every time you choose yourself, without apology, you teach the world how to treat you. Think about the people in your life who make you feel safe. The ones who respect your time, who listen without interrupting, who never guilt you into anything. Those are your reminders. That's what healthy love looks like. And if those people are rare, then strengthening your emotional boundaries becomes even more essential. Not just for protection, but for invitation. Because when you show up with clear, loving boundaries, you begin to attract the kind of relationships that honor your spirit instead of draining it. It's not always easy. Sometimes, saying no feels like standing in the middle of a storm with nothing but your truth. But every time you do, you get stronger. Not harder, stronger. More rooted. More whole. You're not selfish for needing space. You're not mean for declining invitations. You're not difficult for asking for respect. You are simply human. A human who has spent decades giving and loving and carrying the weight of others. And now? Now it's your turn to feel held. To be protected. To be cherished, not just by others, but by yourself. If there's one thing I hope you carry with you after this conversation, it's this: emotional boundaries are not a luxury. They're a form of self-love. And you are allowed to love yourself, deeply and fully, at any age. So take a moment today, just a quiet moment, and ask yourself, where in my life do I feel drained? Where do I feel unheard? Where do I feel the tension in my body, the hesitation in my voice, the tightness in my chest? Those are the places that need your attention. Your tenderness. Your protection. You don't need to fix everything overnight. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you've always been, before the expectations, before the guilt, before the pressure to always be the strong one. It's about coming home to yourself, one small, brave step at a time. And if you've made it this far, I want to thank you. For listening, for reflecting, for giving yourself the gift of awareness. You deserve peace. You deserve boundaries that feel like love, not fences made of fear. If something in this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let others know they're not alone. We're all learning, together. If this conversation helped you in any way, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here with more gentle, honest talks just like this one. Until next time, take care of your heart. Honor your voice. And remember, it's never too late to live with more peace, more strength, and more love. Here's to living your truest life, one boundary at a time.